Order, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bruce, roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrett.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bisbal is not here.
And I talked to him, and he'd like to be excused.
Councilmember Ellis.
Here.
Councilmember Zell. Here. Mayor Fishman. Here. Councilmember Kissick. Here. Councilmember Seeley. Present.
I invite a motion to excuse Bruce.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, please look at your minutes from the December 18th meeting, and if nothing is in order, I need a motion to approve. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, following are the different boards, committees, and commission minutes. I need a motion to accept in the public domain. Aye. Public comment? Public comment? Oh, is it? I'll move the motion. We may have disconnected. If not, Rhonda, report. Finance report.
Good evening, everyone. In front of you, you have a list of the wire transfers for the month of January. The only thing unusual on this one is the first one. It's just once a year that we make contributions to the health savings account for the employees. Otherwise, everything is normal. If you have no questions on that, we'll move to the check register. And basically, to me, it looks like normal routine items. There was a purchase of a new van for the Public Works Department, mainly the Water Department, and also our quarterly payment to the City Grosse Pointe Farms for dispatch lockup in court.
Rhonda, you have a $29.96 payment to Anderson for the SAW grant, the driveway, and the tennis. Are we done with those payments, or what else do we owe?
There's going to be, the SAW grant's a continuing item. The tennis courts, I believe we are done, or there might be a couple minor items yet for that. And in the driveway, I'm sure we're still going to see some bills for that until the final layer is put down.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? If not, I invite a motion to approve this check run.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Financial statements, Rhonda.
Yeah, everything, pretty much right now is running on schedule. We'll just, we're only halfway through the fiscal year, so we'll just see what the next 6 months brings us and how it affects the budget from there.
And I know later we're going to have a proposed budget amendment, so.
Yes.
Okay, and then today I talked to Bruce. Bruce can't be here for the Finance Committee report, but we had an extensive conversation about different things. This is going to be a challenging year. We have some concerns that we're working through, and we're having a town hall February 16th. The focus will be on the master plan for the park, also regarding finances for the city. We have then a council meeting the following Tuesday, and at that point, I think a finance meeting the following Wednesday, right? Bruce is coming in that Tuesday for the council meeting. So, again, we're open to hear from the residents in that, but because many of you call and ask questions about finances, so it'll be good just to have somewhat of a dedicated town hall devoted to finances. I know Vito will be there, and Vito will ask, probably the most number of questions, right? Vito? So, okay, next item, Public Safety Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Since our last meeting, Public Safety has been involved in a few incidents. As everyone knows, on December 27th at roughly 5:30 in the morning, a vehicle entered the lake off of Lockmore Boulevard, and the vehicle's navigation system notified our dispatch center and first the arriving officer, Public Safety Officer Tony Spina. without hesitation, entered the lake and pulled this gentleman to safety. He saved his life, clearly. And I've known Tony a long time. He told me that he never considered anything else but getting this guy out of the water. So that's the caliber of the public safety officers that we employ here. They're phenomenal. Special thanks to Grosse Pointe Farms and Grosse Pointe Woods, who also assisted us at the scene. And a special thanks to Wayne County Marine Division. I contacted my contact at the Marine Division, Sergeant Mike Wassel, and he sent a dive team to locate the vehicle. We couldn't remove the vehicle the day of the incident. We had to wait because the lake was too rough. So they put side sonar out, they located the vehicle, and put divers in the water. They hooked it, and we got it out of the water. It saved it from becoming an environmental issue. So we're very grateful to the county as well as our mutual aid partners.
How far was it from shore when they found it? Did it float?
About
Some-
70 feet offshore.
70 feet
So
offshore.
with the wave action, it kind of bobbed a little bit.
Wow, wow.
It was totally submerged too, yeah.
It was totally submerged.
So that water's getting pretty deep out there, that.
At 60, 70 feet out, you're probably talking about 8 feet of water.
Wow.
So,
Chief, will there be any charges brought against this driver for whatever reason?
probably not based on the circumstances of the investigation. So.
Okay.
Earlier this month, the ordinance prohibiting our marijuana establishments was registered with LARA, the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Agency. Even though Grosse Pointe Shores does not have a commercial district, we passed the ordinance, you passed the ordinance, and we had notified LARA so they could have the information. Also in regards to ordinance, I've spoken with the city attorney on this, House Bill 5939, which made amendments to the Michigan Fireworks Safety Act, was signed in by the governor on 12/28 of 18. Specifically for our purposes, these amendments will allow us to limit the days that fireworks are allowed and the hours that they're allowed. We received quite a few complaints last year, and based on that, we will be making a presentation to amend the current ordinance for your approval. We continue to process 2 PSO candidates. One candidate has been through most of the testing. I'm waiting for the results back. And the second one, we will begin working with him shortly. I'm also working with Grosse Pointe Woods on a final draft of the dispatch lockup agreement. We've been back and forth. We're on about our 12th draft now, and so we're getting close to the end. And as well, we're going to prepare a PowerPoint to give you a look at the current facility in Grosse Pointe Woods. It looks very professional. It's very well designed. Using their existing footprint, we're able to, the security of the prisoners, the security for the non-swimming personnel is going to be very, very good. So I think you'll be happy with that. If you recall, we had a one vehicle that we were selling. We received 8 bids on a 2013 Ford Explorer. The top bid was $5,150, and we
50
complete.
sounds a little bit
Yeah,
better.
we'll take the first off.
That would be nice. We closed the deal early last week, so. And
It's out there now, isn't it? I'm parked right next to it, I think. Is that the vehicle?
that's the detective vehicle.
Oh, and, okay.
Are you referring to the Crown Victoria?
Yes.
That's my baby.
I was gonna say, oh, this is surplus vehicle, okay.
That car won't die. We use it for training, we use it for traffic stop training, and we allow the officers to take it to SWAT training, et cetera, so.
Okay.
That car only has about 75,000 miles on it, and was replaced. What we normally do is we have the vehicles that are, my supervisor vehicle is, the equipment's taken out of it and it's moved down to the detective bureau, and then once they're done with it, then we sell it, so.
Okay.
We step them down, so. And finally, tonight, the only thing I wanted to report was that the law enforcement community lost an icon on December 31st. Chief Bruce Kennedy, formerly, he was in the Navy, served in the Navy. He served in Detroit for 25 years, and in Grosse Pointe City as their Director of Public Safety for 20 years. He mentored hundreds of officers, myself included. His funeral was at St. Paul's Church, and he will be greatly missed. He was quite a guy and had a tremendous reputation. And like I say, he mentored. There was probably 30 or 40 officers at the funeral, And every one of them he had mentored over the years, so he was quite a guy. So, and that's all I have.
Well, when I met him at the DAC, he said, "You have a real good guy." I said, "What are you talking about?" John Schulte. He said, "You have a real good guy," when you came aboard. And he's in the Hall of Fame also in the DAC for the handball.
He was
So
an exceptional guy. He always knew your name. He always would take the time. You asked him a question, he'd give you his professional opinion. He retired out of Detroit as a commander in charge of major crimes, and he's just the old school. He's the old guard, and he's him and my former chief Dick Coretti were just icons in Detroit as well as in Grosse Pointe. So
okay. Well,
Chief, when will we be given an accommodation to Officer Spina for his work on that? Or how does that
I
work?
wasn't sure whether we'll probably have the annual report completed for the March meeting, and I will either do it there, or if we can do it at the February meeting.
Okay.
I'll let council know.
well, please be sure you thank him from the bottom of our hearts. I mean, that's again, at that time, it was still dark probably when he entered the waters. I mean, and you don't know what you face. And I read the account on the newspaper that the water was so rough that it was pushing him back right over the wall.
Yeah.
So, he put himself in harm's way. And again, we appreciate the extraordinary efforts.
Absolutely.
He is a rescue diver, a qualified rescue diver. However, at that moment, he didn't have any of his gear, and just his police uniform. So
Well,
he did an exceptional job.
React on impulse.
He's a credit to this department.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Brett?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I will try to be brief, or I probably will be brief this evening in my report. I'm pleased to announce that we've had another 4 weeks without any significant snowfall. Our salt trucks have actually been out twice in the last 4 weeks, but I don't believe we have put down a full ton of salt on our roads. The mild weather's allowed us to get our Christmas decorations down and stored for the year. The last 4 weeks, we've had 3 water main breaks, 2 of which were on Lakeshore Road and 1 was on Roslyn. And tomorrow, our water department plans on replacing a gate valve on Ballantyne between Bellmead and Fontana. There are going to be quite a few affected homes. They received a notice in their door today, and I anticipate that their water is going to be shut off for between 4 and 5 hours, and we plan on beginning work on that project tomorrow about 9 a.m. The DPW is currently going through its summer equipment, our mowers and things, and getting them ready for the spring. Bob's across the street doing the winter maintenance on the park. And speaking of the park, I can say, I believe it was a week ago today, we had a very extreme northeast wind, a good northeast storm, and it was quite the test for the extension on the seawall at the park. We had waves climbing over the wall and climbing over the outlooks, and there was a lot of pounding going on, but it looks like the wall held up very well. It was really, the big rocks that we put in there were not moved around, so it looks like it passed its first test. Grateful to say that.
Great.
The new gatehouse across the street is moving forward slowly. I believe yesterday they painted the inside, and again, it's moving. And currently, we're looking at different configurations for the fencing that's going to take place in the front of the park. There's a few ideas out there, and we just want to make sure that we do the right thing and we get things the way they're supposed to be. I've also had the opportunity to attend the last couple of SEMSD meetings, Southeast Macomb Sanitary District. I believe I mentioned this before when we know that the Northeast Sewer System was transferred over to the SEMSD. It's something new to me. It's a big system, and right now it looks like the organization is really running on all 8 cylinders, with Brett trying to paddle up behind to get to know how they operate. But it's a pleasure to attend the meetings, and it looks like this area, as far as its sewer system, is going to be run quite a bit more professionally. We do have a couple, I think we mentioned in the past, memorandum of understanding on different things that we're working in our sewer system, but again, it's a learning process, and things are going quite smooth. Also, Grosse Pointe Shores will be hosting the 2019 Household Hazardous Waste Day. I was hoping to have the date for you this evening, however, that is not the case. We are currently hoping to have it April 6th or May 4th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Osius Municipal Park across the street. As soon as we get a confirmation from GFL, we will pass that information along. And as usual, a flyer will be available on our website, be available in a newsletter and at our municipal offices upstairs, listing the acceptable and non-acceptable items for the waste day. We've had the opportunity to run our street sweeper in January. I can't ever remember being able to do that, but it sure did make the streets look good. That's something really unusual for us, and it was kind of neat to do. And actually, today, we started the annual cleanup and go through on our street sweeper. That's, again, why our equipment lasts so long. We kind of take everything apart, clean it, fix what's broke, and put it back together. So we got that one last sweep in. Our coal patch crew has been going out as needed, and if anyone sees anything that may need some attention, please feel free to give me a call. We appreciate those calls because we can't be everywhere at the same time, and our eyes only reach so far. So that is all I have for tonight. If I can answer any questions, I could.
Any questions for Brett?
I do. Concerning the water being shut off, does that have any detrimental effect to those residents who may be in Florida at this time? Do they need to be alerted as far as turning it off, turning it back on, anything like that? Okay.
I received a letter today that it's going to be off. I'm going to wait till 9 o'clock to turn it off.
Okay.
And the letter says, when we turn it back on, they may have bubbles in the water or some discoloration, and just mentions on how to take care of that. And if they have any questions or concerns, get a hold of me, and we'll make sure that.
Okay, so someone that's not coming back, let's say till March or April, they won't know. Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Brett, I got a call from a contractor about water main breaks. I don't know if I quoted or cited the right number, but apparently we have, 16 breaks a year?
18 breaks last year, including 16 breaks and 2 hydrant removals. One as part of that issue between 2 residents where the hydrant was in the way of the driveway. And the total bill for all of last year was like $43,000.
For the 18 breaks or
For
the
all
2?
of those breaks, including moving 2 hydrants.
Okay. So then, whatever was quoted, I don't know, it may have been a higher number. So I just wanted to make sure. And on the gatehouse, did we decide on the windows? Has that been decided? The windows, are they going to be replaced or not
I
replaced?
think we're going to wait to finish the project, and we may do that ourselves once we know the logic about, I didn't catch this and probably should have, that they weren't gonna open, or 3 of them were not gonna open. But usually you want some cross ventilation, but the cross ventilation from the door will be open and that window slides, but in the other one, it's close to a lake shore, and there'll be a lot of noise coming that way. So we are gonna put in, I think we're gonna put a fan in to bring air from the outside it's something that we're gonna take care of doing.
Okay.
Brett doesn't know that he will be installing that.
I'm learning as we go.
Mark and I talked about, those units that they have in motels that, you cut a hole in the wall and they're heating and cooling units. Because either way, whether the window's open or closed, there are days of extreme weather when we use a portable air conditioner and we use a portable heater. And since we're in the construction phase anyways, instead of reinventing the wheel and scrapping the windows, it's probably smarter to just put in this air and heat unit.
Yep.
And then, like you said, if they want to put that unit on fan during days when the weather isn't bad, then,
Okay.
you got, yeah, great. So that's the solution.
Okay, good. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Brett. Good report. Park Committee, Doug?
Yeah, nothing really to report. Brett touched on a few things. The duck chaser or the goose chaser is on vacation down in Florida, so there's no geese being chased over there if anybody else wants to run their dog around.
Yeah, we got a letter from a resident about that.
That's
So-
all I have.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Harbor Committee? Matt?
Yeah, the notices went out to all of the boat owners in December, basically saying that it's time to get their money in, and the website itself is going to be reset, I think, at the end of the month. Gave everybody 30 days to get their money in, and then February 1st, it'll reset, and anybody who isn't paid those are all fair game. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, but we're in good shape.
And then we'll update the board upstairs.
Board is on the wall, and you can currently tell what's open and what isn't.
Oh, you can? Good.
Yeah, I'll send, I'll take a picture tomorrow and send it to each
Oh,
of you
good.
to show you.
Okay.
And the website too, has that schematic of the harbor, and that will also, you'll be able to go to the city website and see what's
Oh,
available.
perfect, perfect. All right, good, thanks, Matt. Bob, infrastructure?
Seawall. Brett and I took a ride down there today. I went last week. Virtually, almost the entire section that's in the city of Grosse Pointe Shores is under stress. Mike tells me that finally the city has agreed to a meeting on February 4th in Wayne County. So, see where that goes. They're gonna have to do something. It's getting to the point where I told both Brett and Mark that it's getting to be a hazard. Something's gotta be done down there. And, right, there's quite a bit of ice down there. We found chunks of concrete probably 16, 80 pounds up way up in the grass, so that's how powerful the water was.
Wow.
Just taking it right out, and just moving it. So some of the gravel, the heavy stone that they put in, the county put in, was all being washed away because it's real lightweight, it's small aggregate, maybe 1.5 inch, 2 inch square, water just pushes it right out.
Your tax dollars at work, huh?
Yeah, right, yeah. I won't comment anymore.
Put some sand in there.
On the lighter side, the city went to WOW a couple years ago, and they've taken over the billing process, water meters in both the north and south, and saving almost $200-300 a month for Comcast, so.
Good. Okay,
He's looking
good.
at $3,000 savings every year just by going to WOW, so that was probably a good move for the city.
Mm-hmm, good.
That's it for now.
Any questions of Bob? Okay, if not, Improvement Foundation, Brett? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay.
We had a great
Matt?
meeting, well attended, added a new trustee. Margaret Wirtz is now a trustee in the foundation, which is great. Was happy that Mark was able to attend the meeting. He was able to present the foundation with the new concept master plan and give them an update of where we're at in that process. And Mary's committee is currently handling it and reviewing it, and ultimately, I think, the plan will be to have a public meeting, and at that public meeting, do some brainstorming, get some more input, and then ultimately finalize it and begin working from that plan going forward. There were a couple of comments made at the meeting that I think are important to clarify. First thing is that, everybody out there in TV land who's watching this meeting needs to know that all of these meetings are public meetings. They're all posted, you're given notice of the meetings. So if anybody wants to attend the planning committee meeting or any of our council meetings, we welcome the input, we welcome the participation of the community, and want people to understand that, the more of us that collaborate, probably the better the end result will be. So, that said, stay tuned, because I think Mary's committee is meeting very soon, and
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday. And then we're talking about a public meeting coming up as well in February, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the other thing that was mentioned is there was some confusion that the council had put a moratorium on projects for the foundation. I clarified that that was not the case. There's never been a moratorium. And they were very, very happy to hear that. There's a couple of projects that they're looking at, and I encourage them to move forward, and that we welcome, any ideas that they have as far as improving the city in any way that they come up with. So, all that said, the only other thing I want to say is that, if you go into the park now, the median in the parking lot, all that landscaping was removed, and I believe Marshall Landscaping put in all new trees in there, and they look fantastic. It's Okay, that's part of the foundation report, right? Did Marshall actually do the installation or no? Okay, got it. Like I said, Marshall Landscaping had nothing to do with the installation of the trees.
They coordinated it,
Yeah,
though.
and, but they look great. It's a different look, and I think it kind of gives a more, I don't know, up north feel with the pine trees. So, all that said, things are moving along well, and, you know, the one thing that came out in the financial report, and I'm really happy, as a liaison to be able to report this, the gifting to the city doubled in 1 year. So that's pretty good. That's all I got.
That's real good. Thanks, Matt. John, I see that you're here. We just finished the Harbor Committee. Would you like to add anything? Matt gave a brief presentation, and Mark indicated the board now is in operation. We have the names of all the occupants, and so if you would like to supplement that. Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Tom Krolchik's on vacation, I believe, so we couldn't really get into communication, but the bills have been sent out the second half. I don't know if you already went over that. Okay. All right. Anyway, so once that's done, what I'd like to do with him is go through that, and then we can start to do second walls for the residents, and then start to approach the non-residents, and then also go over through the harbor and see what the repairs have to be and pilings. Maybe you already did that. And so that's going to be, we have to wait for the weather to get to that point. And then another point that we may want to, the council may want to talk about after this is in the terms of safety with the harbor entrance, since we have one single egress and ingress that we share with the yacht club. The yacht club's in the stages of getting entrance buoys, like most harbors have, like the Farms and the City, Crescent, and these are going to be very, very nice, well-lit, organized buoys. Of course, they come with a price tag. And of course, the shores people are going to be able to utilize that as a runway to come in safely. So don't be surprised if the board comes and talks to the mayor or the council at maybe helping them for this safety feature for our own residents and boaters.
Okay.
So that's going to probably be relatively soon, I would
Okay.
think.
Good. Thank you.
And then I don't know if you guys talked about, that's been tossed about the park and the harbor committee joining. I don't think that's a good move. I think that they're totally two separate entities. I don't really have any expertise or judgment or knowledge of, you know, gazebos, parks, landscaping, pools, playscapes, or that such. I'm trying to focus on, once we walk past the sidewalk to the harbor. That's what, I think that should be they're two separate entities in my mind. And it's kind of like, you can't, it's best to be doing what you know how to do and not trying to get into something else. And it just kind of, I think too many cooks spoil the soup.
Okay, any questions? Matt also indicated apparently that the website's up and running.
Yes.
And on the website, you can see what's available, and, you know, people will be able to actually see what,
Yeah, it'd be a great year.
okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Who is recommending that the harbor and park
Me,
to go together? Why,
it's been like that for many, many, many years, and it was
Right.
taken apart.
right?
And I think it was more of a political motivation taking it apart than it was, you know, because they weren't working together or anything like that. So I said, maybe we should put them back together.
Okay.
But that's the mayor's call, whatever he wants to
Okay.
do on that.
But do you agree that in this last at least year or two since John has come up and done his expertise, that the harbor has definitely been better maintained and
Yeah,
better
well, I'm not gonna say no.
staffed? Okay.
Oh, yeah. No,
Not with
they've done
John
a great
present.
job, but I, you know,
I
I
mean,
don't
I
see
think
why
it
that would
makes-
make a difference that the park and the harbor could do that together. I mean, the harbor is just as much a part of the park as the park is of the harbor.
Well, I mean, a case could be made that they are two separate entities. You know, some people that go into the park only go to the harbor, or they're supposed to if they're non-residents. And then the other side of it, for what it's worth, I agree with Dr. Seago that it should be separate for what he said, is that's his area of expertise, that's his wheelhouse, and he doesn't get caught up in the other part of it with the park. That's,
Well, it seems like there's a lot of issues, and it wasn't done very, spontaneously, but I think, Mark, you had indicated that years ago, in the 70s or 80s, they were separate. And then somehow they were joined together, I'm not sure what era, but it just seemed like we were getting a lot of issues regarding the boats, the usage of the boats, non-residents, not just the prices, safety issues. We're at the end of a very well-established harbor, but access in and out, particularly by the larger boats. And I used to have a boat there, and I wasn't a very good boater, and so there wasn't a big margin of error there. And Dr. Siegel is really trying to address the safety issues. We have kayaks that are on the end of the docks, the finger docks. We've had boats that stick out. I wasn't aware of it. And with their props sticking out, hanging out, these big outdrives, really potentially putting people at risk. And then we have the kayak ramp, launch. At one time, I thought we could move the kayak ramp to the other side where the volleyball courts were. We looked at it, I think, Matt, you had even indicated you could fabricate something out of aluminum so that we can have a ramp right there. But the water is pretty deep right there. It's almost 6 feet right at the wall, I believe. And there's no safe way for children to do it. It would be an adventure even for an experienced kayaker, I think, to access it from that point. Because you see these kids, 12, 13 years old, take a kayak off the rack and they're out there in the fairway. And, some of these large boats, they just don't have the visibility to see them. To me, it's an accident ready to happen. So, but these are some of the things I wanted the Harbor Committee to address. Then with the Park Committee, we've had requests for a toddler lot, not just for, the older kids, but a younger toddler lot. Someone says, can't we have little picnic tables for the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds? That's a park issue. We had issues regarding the pavilion, the use. St. John's Hospital, we would have 250 guests on a given Saturday, and it would wipe out our parking lot. It would basically, it would surpass anything that we could do. And so the Park Committee dealt with those issues early on, whether or not, we put a limit, right? It's 100 and 150 depending on the day. And we were basically a rental place for company picnics, and for $50 you could rent the pavilion and add another 10 picnic tables and seating and get your $50 back after you provided evidence that it was basically clean. And non-residents were essentially bidding on these things. April 1st, we'd have a lineup outside the door. And there was certainly there was just an over-interest. I thought the Park Committee then could deal with these issues, not just the safety, but resident uses, because on a given Sunday, I may get a call from an 83-year-old resident saying, I couldn't get in the park. And Mark, you know who I'm talking about. But he couldn't get in the park. I couldn't park in the park, so we decided just to go home. And it was a nice Sunday because the park was overwhelmed by really 1 or 2 picnics, and we got, I think, better management by having the Park Committee look at it. But, well, I didn't mean to get into and I said I'd consider it. I said if I'm not wed
Up to
to
you.
either way, but if I thought, if Dr. Siegel said, well, we got the hard issues done, why don't we go back to what we did? And if the council agreed, to me, it's not my decision, it's a council decision. So, but I appreciate, the input. So, well, with that, Brian, I lead you into the legal report.
Okay, good. Thanks, Mayor. Quiet month. Not a great deal to report, but I'll cover it with you. Since our meeting on December 18th, city attorney's been engaged in the following activities on behalf of the city. First, you may remember that there was a Freedom of Information Act request for voter records, 2016 election ballots in particular. And there was an outfit called Public Impact Research Group, I believe, or something on that order, looking for ballots in all jurisdictions, and not only in Michigan, but elsewhere throughout the country. And the person requesting was a person named Emily without a last name and without a real identification of who actually Emily was representing or purporting to represent. We responded to the Freedom of Information Act request some months ago with a request for money for copying and labor associated with complying with the FOIA request. And after a considerable amount of back and forth with the attorney for Emily, or for the Emily group if you want, we concluded on behalf of the city that even though we have to have somebody there under Michigan election law, ensuring that the ballots are not touched, and that they're only photographed and they're only touched by city employees and not by the inspecting person. We agreed in the context of the appeal of the fee that we had sought to impose, we agreed to let them go ahead and inspect without a fee. So that appeal is over with on the one hand. On the other, interestingly, the Michigan legislature enacted an amendment to the Michigan Freedom of Information Act on December 28th of this year. And in a nutshell, and we just did an article on a newsletter article, and I sent it on to the city. We just literally published it today. But basically, the act now requires that a requesting person has to include their complete name, address, and contact information, so no more Emily's. And if it's made by a person or an entity other than an individual, then the complete name and address and contact person information of the person's agent who is an individual. Valid telephone number, electronic email address. Essentially, this amendment prevents an anonymous FOIA or a FOIA that does not fully identify the person making the request. Then there's a separate provision in this new legislation that requires that if a deposit is requested by the city for, again, copying and labor, which is statutorily authorized under the Act, if a deposit is requested and not paid within 45 days of the FOIA request, plus 3, without getting too technical, so 48 days. If the deposit's not paid, then the request is deemed abandoned, and the city or municipality no longer has to comply with the request. This is all in response, again, this is a legislature, but it's in response to the Emily request that was vexing, virtually every municipality in Michigan. We also, during the last month, prepared a number of statutorily required notices of enactment of the recent ordinances that the City Council approved at the last meeting, the Fire Code Ordinance Amendment on the one hand, and the recreational marijuana opt-out ordinance on the other. We conferred with the city regarding public news media communication matters. We also conferred with the city regarding a subpoena of public safety officer pension records. The city had received a subpoena from a party who's in litigation with a former PSO. We conducted a review of the pension documents to be turned over pursuant to that subpoena, and consulted with the city regarding the timing and the turnover of those documents. E-Plan's development matter was quiet. We had a few conversations with the city regarding project oversight matters. We did prepare a statutory and ordinance timeline summary of further action, required action by the developer and the city, and it was prepared for use by the City Planning Commission members on the one hand, City Council members on the other, and local news media. There had been an article in one of the local news media suggesting, fairly recently, suggesting that everything had to be wrapped up within 90 days, and I think there was a misunderstanding of the timeline that was extensively discussed at the, November City Council meeting, maybe even October, going backwards. But in any event, we corresponded with the news media regarding the timeline requirements. There's it's much more attenuated than 90 days. it's up to a year and then some, depending on when the developer takes action, when the city responds on the other. And then finally, on the property line dispute litigation between the two property owners on Lake Shore Road that are adjacent to one another. The city's a party to that. We are just monitoring that as it goes. That's, we're not taking any direct action. That's being handled by the city's appointed insurance counsel. That's my report, and I am glad to answer any questions anyone may have.
Any questions for Brian? If not, thanks, Brian, good report. Mark, your report?
Sure. Bob mentioned, or he didn't mention that he's our PATS representative and chairs the board. And I raised this because we're having to approach the county CDBG program in a different way. We may not even be required for us to individually hold hearings, because we're going to be doing a joint application with, I think, most, if not all, of the other growth points in Harper Woods. And they're changing their program a little bit based on a study that they did of other areas and some other HUD oversight things. So there will be a public hearing officially, I think it's at 6 o'clock. The one on the east side is going to be in Harper Woods City Hall on the 29th at 6 o'clock, and Bob and I will probably go to that, because he's also representative on the CDBG Advisory Council and has to travel all the way to Van Buren and way down river whenever they meet. There's a program, American Society of Public Administration, Metro Detroit chapter, tomorrow evening at U of M Dearborn. And one of my friends, he was the city clerk in Sterling Heights, is going to be the speaker, one of the speakers, along with Eric Lufer from Citizens Research Council, on the effects of the 3 ballot questions. We don't know what half the effects are going to be on the marijuana passage, but on the redistricting program and some of the changes to voting, how quickly voting records and stuff like that. So Melody will talk about that. Brian mentioned the Freedom of Information Act. I just want to add one thing, that this was going to require Tom and another city employee, probably for 2 days, because under state election law, an outside person not sworn in as an election inspector can't touch the ballots. So if they wanted to photograph the front and back of the ballots, we'd have to pull them out, a few at a time, put them on the table, turn them over, and yet we couldn't charge these people. So I'm glad that the legislature looked at this and and when no one could figure out who the heck these people were or what agency they were from, they didn't have to give their name and stuff. Tim Kalina I spoke to today because, again, Bob and Brett have sent material to the county about the wall and the shoreline project. We're continuing to work with the Corps of Engineers and Grosse Pointe Farms on another grant application, but you know, Tim's setting up a meeting on the 4th of February, and we'll be inviting, as soon as we get a location, I'll let people know, but Councilman Seeley has helped us with a proposal, a legitimate proposal to replace that seawall in a location, which is way cheaper than some of the cost estimates in the past. So we hope we're going to get the county people moving on that. The historical plaque, you saw a wooden facsimile of it, which will go up somewhere in that location. As soon as Helen, who we asked to look at it, checks the sun location and stuff like, we may have to turn it a different way so it doesn't affect the garden. They like them planted where there's flowers and garden around, but we'll get that up soon. It's a front and back sign, and we'll have an official dedication once it gets warm and people from the state can travel down for it. We also have, thanks to the chief and the people on staff who read this, we have the official plaque for Benson Ford, which will be our second location, and we'll do that in the spring as well. But we can put up the plaque and actually dedicate it at that point. And then Tom is obtaining some pricing for additional, or for new cameras and whatever else we need here. New information from Conti Electric, who we have really a great working relationship with. And they and WOW have done a great job of replacing and significantly cutting costs, as Bob mentioned earlier, with a lot of our communication stuff. So, and that's something we could talk about, and you'll probably mention the meeting of the mayor and managers on the PEG fees, and we've collected some of that information, and of course, our contract with the War Memorial expires next November, at the end of November. That was it for me.
Okay, good, Mark. Any questions of Mark?
Any word on the Ford House construction, how that is going
Yes.
and everything? Because
I can
we
say
met with
it's
them in the
going
summertime,
pretty
but
well, they're still working on foundation stuff in the ground. And I talked to Gene Tutag, our building official, has been over there. Tom and I went over about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's still no structural seal unless it's come up since that time. But we talk to them fairly regularly. We'll get an update, and we're expecting their schedule comes to us about this time of the year every year for the activities going on, and so that, and I'll send a copy to council of that too, so we know what's going on. And probably they'll want us to come over, although it's kind of cold in that tent. Maybe we can meet someplace else to get the update as to what's going on there.
Any other questions? Mark, the only question I had was, well, I was hoping Tim Killeen was going to be here, because I talked to some of the other mayors, the Grosse Pointe mayors, and they're questioning the validity of the community block grant and what it means to their communities. I know in our community, it was like $20,000 roughly,
17,000 last year.
17,000.
But
And
we'll get 20 next year.
And then the problem is you got the audit requirements. It's basically a federal HUD audit, and they're concerned that, I think there is going to be an audit. They're auditing the community block grant from 2 years ago or something, which then involves Wayne County, but it involves the federal authorities and HUD. And because we're a participant, we have the same, like, statutory record retention requirements, and they're concerned that maybe we should consider not being part of the community block grant program.
Well, we can.
One said that he's gonna definitely make that motion, so.
Most of them all get more than we do, but their current requirements, and Bob could speak to this too, yeah, are that we're gonna have a joint application. And I'm pretty sure the farm is gonna do the joint application on behalf of all of us. And whether it's 5 out of the 6 or 4 out of the 6, I know that's gonna be our recommendation to participate. The issue with these programs is if there's a value to the program without changing or impacting our operation, and you know we use it for Full Circle and for the special needs person that works in DPW, and we continue to be able
For
to
Charlie?
do that.
Oh. Okay, because one of them mentioned that the audit.
I will tell you, you and I can talk later, but if it was one particular one, they used the money improperly. And I'm not gonna say who, we can talk about that. I think that's who it was. They may have a problem and may be required, it's currently trying to be negotiated between the county and HUD, so they don't have to pay back the money that they use improperly.
Well, and again, I don't know the details, but the concern was that you could spend more defending an audit by HUD than the value of what the program generates for the city.
Yeah, in some cases, that's true, as long as we can use it. And there's really the again, we give a portion to Pat's, and the farms has taken the lead, and it's passed HUD's muster to help with senior programs that the Helm does for us, for all the communities. And those 2 areas are gonna be likely, along with the small portion that we dedicate towards the Full Circle and our summer students, as well as DPW.
Oh, for the concession stand too? Okay.
Part of the problem for that was that Wayne County was understaffed. Terry Carroll had 1 person, and she was a 2-day-a-week person. He's finally got a couple full-time, and she's made full-time now, they've made some other people full. Now they can monitor it better. Before, this young lady was just busting her butt to do all this work. And she'd be at our meetings till, sometimes we don't get done to 8, 9 o'clock at night. And she'd be there all day trying to get that stuff square, so, but he's actually got 3 people working for him now. So they're gonna be able to monitor this a lot better than they were in the past. There's
Okay.
just a couple communities that's basically messing up.
And the one thing to add to, one of the things I used to brag about, this program was run in Wayne County with 4 or 5 people in years past. When I went to Oakland County, when I was in Huntington Woods, they had 27, this is not the right number, but it was close to that, 27 or 30 people on staff, and they got 2/3 of the money less than Wayne County got. So they ate a lot of it in administrative costs, but they had people that would help. And one of the problems also in Wayne County was that the previous county executive contracted this whole program out to an engineering firm who, it was an absolute disaster. And that, some of that is coming back now, for some of these decisions that were made. And HUD is saying, look, you used up all our good wishes over the years. So as long as we can still benefit by the program, it costs us 2 public hearings, some ad in the newspaper, and again, we met all the requirements, but they did not have the staff to help the really poor communities, like the Inksters or River Rouge and Ecorse and Highland Park and Hamtramck. Now they do have some staff to do that, but those are the people that they had to lay off all their planners and their people that could come up with the proper ways to administer this program, so.
Well, when I saw Tim Clean at the volunteer appreciation party, he said, don't worry, I'm on the audit committee. I says, well, Tim, that still doesn't make me feel any better.
But he's gonna come at for our.
Is he
I talked to
coming?
him today.
Okay.
He'll come to the February meeting. We'll put him on early, and by then, we will also know who's gonna administer, and again, as long as it's to our city's benefit for the programs that we can, and I think it will run a lot smoother. Now that, again, there's some county staff, they did increase their cut for administrative cost of it, but it's still gonna be, there'll be programs that will benefit all of the Grosse Points and Harper Woods, I think, as part of it. And, one of their special grants, which we helped get, run through Harper Woods, is we got a generator, so that the Helm or SOC and their building can be a heating and cooling place for when power goes out in the farms. And it's happened several times, and Meals on Wheels go through that building for delivery and stuff like that, and there are people that show up for lunch they couldn't otherwise without that, so.
Okay, well, good, Mark. Maybe invite them and make
Yeah,
it part of the
sure.
agenda so
Yeah.
that the council can hear, and if there's concerns, we can address it then, because if federal audit, someone was telling me that they go back 3-4 years, and they are looking for records that may not have been, may be
We have,
misplaced.
And Bob also could speak to this, there was an issue with Wayne County primarily when this was contracted out, and we were able to, through PATS and through changes, provide all the information that the county and HUD requested. Actually, I'll just tell you, one of them, they wanted the names of the students from the special needs kids that go through Grosse Pointe North, that they take PATS transportation to their workshops, as long as they're below a certain age and considered students through the program. And there was an issue, but we had a workaround to fix that.
Okay,
That was satisfactory to HUD and to
Okay.
Wayne County.
okay,
That money
good.
goes to a lot of good use, it just needs, now that you got everything in place, it should be administrative.
Well, if, I would feel better if it was our application, but it's a consolidated application, so we join with other communities, which then, really, there's no apportionment of liability or apportionment of cost, because it's joint, it's like joint and several. Is that right, Mark?
We're not, HUD is.
We don't have a separate standalone program, we join in
Yes.
with essentially Wayne County, and then at that point, we're subjected to the weaknesses of any of the communities in that joint application, if there is a weakness.
They go back after Wayne County for the funds, and really one of the problems has been there are some of the people, and Bob and I will not name names, that are on this advisory council, kept saying, oh, we didn't spend our money, you didn't spend your money, we'll give you an extension, and that's created a real problem with HUD. They recapture money from communities who have not spent it, and they've gone past the deadline to do that. So those are rules that the committee that Bob's on has worked on to make sure that doesn't happen. So we are in compliance, and it's currently, you know, each year that, well, last year and I believe this year, the president has zeroed out the whole CDBG program because places like Wayne County in the past have not administered it, and they say, well, we don't need the money, they can't do it. These poor communities that are there, Detroit and others, have not spent their money properly.
Okay.
So, but I think that's, as he said, improved, and as long as we can benefit from it without costing us too much.
Right. For our 18,000, I don't want to spend 40,000
No,
to
no.
defend it.
They, right now, the current program is gonna serve 6 communities that are considered,
Yeah, special, poverty
Poverty.
guidelines and all
yeah,
that stuff.
like River Rouge, you know, Hamtramck, Island Park, Belvedere, Inkster. There's 6 of them.
Yeah.
But the bulk of the money's gonna go, so it's gonna be more concentrated, you know, you'll be able to watch it a lot closer. But we need our money for PATS to pay for PATS.
Okay.
Without that, you wouldn't, some of these people couldn't get anywhere. I like this, the special needs, they go out through north. Grosse Pointe School System goes through north for the PATS.
Because I'm just thinking, instead of the grant, accepting the liability, the inchoate liability, just giving them the 20,000, the 18,000 to Pats directly from our check, you know.
Well, as long
And
as
in that
we
way,
can
we
still
escape,
use it.
we escape the, you know, the.
We're not, believe me, I went through the HUD audits directly. We used to get 2.2 million in St. Clair Shores, and you have to provide or go through their guidelines, and sometimes they make it difficult, you know, the home, we really will participate, we've actually had 2 homes here that have participated years ago in housing rehab through that program. It's helped people here for roof and some other.
Well, originally, it was supposed to be for seniors to keep them in their houses. When we made our first application around 2012, I think that's what it was, and about the same amount, about $18,000.
Well, the 3 guidelines, and I don't wanna, you know, I can
Yeah.
spend more, and we'll tell Tim.
No, I've heard
talk
enough,
about
but,
that.
you know.
Yeah, but as long as
But-
it's to our advantage, and it doesn't cost us to
Right.
participate, you're right.
Okay.
It makes sense, and we do monitor.
Thanks,
And
Mark.
Detroit's not part of that, by the way.
No, they're not part of
They
this
have,
program.
they have their own. You think
Okay.
we're screwed up?
Okay, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Mark. Okay, new business. We have the proposed budget amendments. Rhonda, do you want to explain them?
I believe the cover sheet on this pretty much explains everything to be done. It's just a house cleaning item that we should do twice a year for sure. So in June, we'll be back. The one large item is the $227,000 that I omitted from the original budget on the revenue and the expenditure side, so at least it washed itself out there. I think it was I was more worried about calculating the tax rate and not including that expenditure, so I didn't include the revenue either.
That's good when the credits match the debits.
Yeah,
I fell off my chair when she told me about it. I said, no, it's an offset. They're both revenue and expense.
yeah.
Okay,
You know,
we,
we can go through these if you need to.
no, I discussed with
They're all
Bruce. Are
housekeeping.
there any other questions? Our auditor suggested rather than once a year, wait until the time of the field work, that the best practices of municipalities regarding government accounting standards require a periodic adjustment as we see adjustments to be made. So at this point, I invite a motion to approve these proposed budget amendments.
So moves, yeah.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Rhonda.
Rhonda, while you're up there, have you received your new software?
We won't be receiving that until like September.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It was either install and train in the spring or in the fall. Well, the spring I'll be kind of busy with the budget, so
Okay.
let's do it.
Oh, all right, okay.
And that's to help the budget out probably too,
To
then,
help
right?
everything.
For-
Yeah.
Of
okay.
everything,
Okay.
payroll and
So,
everything.
so let me ask this. If we do it that way, then we're gonna have the same situation with people getting a big water bill and at the same time the property taxes are due?
Yes,
For one more year. But we're also hopefully completing, Brett might comment on this for next time, the remaining amount and numbers we need on the new meter system and stuff too. That's gonna help. So we can immediately notify people if there's a problem like we've had for everybody. How many we got left?
I
70,
think
80?
on the last billing, we had about 80% of the homes hooked up to the radio reads, which helps a lot with the amount of time it takes to do a billing. So, you know, I'm not sure, you know, how the water department, how busy they've been the last couple months to increase that number, but we should be getting there real soon. And so if there is a leak in a sprinkling system or some other, we'll be able to catch it sooner than later. That'll help people.
When our fiscal year starts in July, is it possible to just do monthly billings until we get the new software up? Just so that people aren't getting this enormous bill? I mean, I think that's a real issue.
I think the finance committee could probably talk about whether to first change it to maybe bi-monthly.
Whatever relief we can offer, because you get this whopping, you know, summer tax bill and then this whopping water bill all at
Yeah,
once.
Well, it's only a whopping water bill for those people that are watering their lawns a lot.
Mhm.
I've noticed this past year, you know, a number of people, a number of homes have cut down the amount of watering, you know, frequency and duration, you know, when they do have their sprinkler systems on, and they have noticed a big difference in their bills.
Okay.
Oh, Rich, you want to come on up? You have a question?
Well, I've got a question about the watering, and obviously billing the water. Well, 1/3 of the bill is for the actual water usage and 2/3 is for sewage. Approximately.
Oh, right.
Why can't the residents that have large lawns buy a separate meter for their grass if that water is not going in the sewer?
I can tell you the answer is because our bills from, used to be Wayne County and Southeast Macomb Sanitary District are charged to us both on meters of water going back in and for all water purchased. So unless it's subsidized in some other way, and of course those on the water can do what we do for watering the medians, and that's pump out of the lake for doing that. Otherwise, there's no way to recover those costs, and someone else it has to be subsidized. But our bills from Detroit, and there are some communities outside of, there's some in the metro area, only a few that I know of, but there's some outside of this area that do allow a separate meter for that. Because you're right, most of the water doesn't go back in, but our infiltration and inflow back into the system is such that we pay now the Southeast Macomb Sanitary District on all water purchase to begin with, because they're figuring sooner or later that goes into the system, and we pay meters going back into the system for the flow that comes in from the rainwater and all the other stuff. And there's also a challenge currently to those communities that do subsidize this. There's a firm, Brian and I have talked about this in several cases out of Oakland County, that are challenging any issues with respect to stormwater and how it's paid for and stuff.
There's two meters, there's one for the potable water coming into the city, Grosse Pointe Shores. There's also a meter that
Well-
meters the sanitary sewage going out of Grosse Pointe Shores.
Simply yes. And we are in deduct meters. Our water coming in is deduct meters from Grosse Pointe Woods. We're servicing, we could be a subsidiary of them because that's the meters. But when, Detroit, formerly now Great Lakes Water, but formerly Detroit agreed some years ago to give us their distance and elevation factors, even though before that we had different distance and elevation factors. So, and I'm trying to think of where's the meter going back. Brett, isn't that at Cook Road?
How often are the meters
You mean the master reader, the master meter,
Your
the,
own water meter in your house can be inaccurate over a number of years.
but I was told
Last
what,
time the village checked their meters.
well, I was told that the older the meter, the more likely it was to read low,
Right.
because it's mechanical, is that right, Brett? So if you have an old meter, you probably want to keep that old meter. Is that right, Brett? I mean, okay, not to be.
You are correct.
Okay, well, thanks. Next item, Park Master Plan. Matt, do you want to present?
Last June, we decided that it would be a good idea to update the master plan for Parks and Recreation. It had been a few years since we had done that, and although we're not legally required to do it because we're not applying for any state grant money, we just thought it might be a good tool for fundraising and for the city and the Improvement Foundation to be able to come together on mutually agreed upon projects. And we updated the plan, put in, you know, things like the splash pad and the new entrance and the gatehouse and playscape and other things that had been added in the time frame from the last master plan. And where we're at right now is Mary's committee is meeting, and they're going to go through what the architect has put on paper at this point and kind of give it their blessing. And the way that I think we want to go forward approaching this is that instead of just saying, okay, now we've approved a plan and then just let it kind of collect dust for the next 5 to 10 years and then go through all this again, I like to treat it more as a living document. I think that as the planning committee, I'd like the planning committee and the foundation particularly to develop a partnership so that when they have ideas that they want to do, they bring it to the planning commission. The planning commission says, yes, let's add that to the master plan. And then Mary comes to us with a proposal and we amend the master plan so that it constantly is, is changing as the focus for the city's goals and ideas of, like a few years ago, no one even knew what a pickleball court is. And now all of a sudden it's a real big deal to have them. And, at one point in time it was important to have shuffleboard courts and now no one plays it. So things do change and it's important that, we have that flexibility. And I think it's important to treat this master plan as kind of a living document. That being said, on February 16th, we're going to hold a town hall meeting and we're inviting the public to come and we're going to do kind of a brainstorming session because Mark was kind enough to hold a kind of a public forum where he included all of the chairs of the various committees and other participants to come to a brainstorming session where we started really talking about future ideas and projects for the park and things that were on the old plan that we thought probably were never going to get done and maybe we should remove them from the new plan. And all that being said, the one thing that came through very loud and clear is that based on age, based on problems with infrastructure, and then based on future needs, the public really wants to build a new pool, a new bathhouse. And the concept that came up at that meeting was to have the bathhouse have a second story to it and have that entire second story be dedicated to a community center, like a ballroom, maybe a conference room and a kitchen, a service elevator so people could have caterers bring things in and out if they want to have a private function, and kind of go off the idea that the, Grosse Pointe War Memorial is used, where it's all glass all around, and being up on the second floor, the view of the lake will be spectacular, and its proximity to the lake is such that it really will be a very impressive venue. And then over like the area where the concession stand is, there's talk about on the second floor having a balcony off of the hall so that if people wanted to be outside, they could do that as well. Just some of those are ideas that have been brought up. But ultimately, at this town hall meeting, we want the public to come in, give us their input so that when we decide to go forward with this thing, that we have the amenities that the community wants. And it's my goal that we raise the money privately, that we don't impact the community from a tax standpoint at all, that we approach our residents, kind of use the example that the people in Grosse Pointe Grosse Pointe Park have used, where they have raised the money privately, and really, their park is spectacular and has more amenities, I believe, than any of the other Grosse Pointes. So, it's kind of a little goal of ours to be able to see this thing come together, see the community and the foundation and the city all come together on this big project, raise the money and build this thing and really have brand-new amenities and a brand-new pool and bathhouse and community center that we can all be proud of and utilize and, you know, increase our property values, and the desirability of younger families coming into our community is key for us. And if we've got a great park, you know, that's a great selling feature. So that's really about it in a nutshell. If there's any questions, council has
Any
it.
questions of Matt? Yeah, that's a real good summary, Matt. I mean, the last time we really had a complete update is the 31-page report in 2002, I'm sorry, to September 16th by Albert Kahn Associates. And that's really the last time we really had a full-scale approach. And I think, Matt, you're right. I think by making it a living document, like a living trust, this is a living will. This is our legacy for the future of the Shores, and to attract the young families. I went to some event just a few weeks ago, and they said, "Can't you have a little toddler park, a little area just for little tots?" And the picnic tables, you know, not our picnic tables are too big for a 2-year-old, for a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. They fall down, they can hurt themselves. And so, you know, they seem obvious, but, you know, unless you solicit public comment, you don't know. And so, Matt, I think that's a real good idea. I think the town hall will be focused on really acquiring more public comment. If you can't come, call one of us, or send an email to one of us, or call Mark. Just let us know. And we're going to have tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, we'll put it out in the hallway, the current plan for the master plan of the park, right in the hallway on a signboard, so that you can see it. Of course, it'll be available upstairs and copies, so people can look at it and see if this is what we want, or where we want to go from here. It should be evolving. It'll be more relevant if it's evolving and adjusting to the needs of the city. Every time I see the shuffleboard courts, I'm thinking, God, when's the last time I played shuffleboard, you know? I think I was up north somewhere in the UP, and that was a big, but that was 30 years ago. So, again, it's an area that's an area no one goes to. It's like a dead area of the park, you know? So we'd like to make it more alive, more vibrant, so that we have more appeal to the families. They go, man, I really love your park. I want to come back here.
The other thing that's been a real concern is that if we put in a new pool, we could design it in a manner that the swim team has the lane length that they need, the size that they need, and yet not impact the community when they're out and they want to swim laps, or they just want to be in the general swimming area, so they're not competing for pool time and space. And that when we host swim meets, that we have a venue that's large enough to be able to accommodate one of the other cities coming and being our guest at our park. So there's a lot that we can achieve with this. The foundation has talked about putting in the toddlerscape that you talked about. And you know, the council last year, with the help of Brett, approved a ice skating rink and new pickleball courts. And I think that the foundation is, you know, entertaining different ways to achieve those goals. But ultimately, when this whole thing comes together, we're going to really have an incredible, you know, plan. This new master plan talks about behind us, where Vernier Hill is, for example, that there would be an ice skating rink along the wall where the DPW storage is. We can use power from that to light the ice rink at night and have a beautiful outdoor ice rink right next to Vernier Hill. Expand Schroeder House so that people can have winter parties in there, have an outdoor fire pit. So we have this whole winter thing that's available to people, and that's part of the plan. And, you know, across the street in the park, talk about another gazebo-style pavilion for smaller parties, and, like I say, a pool, bathhouse, community center room that people can use, and then a toddler skate and pickleball courts. So there's a lot that we can do, and I think when it finally comes to fruition, we can look back and go, wow, we really have something to be proud of here. And, there's some great ideas that were kicked around the other night. We talked about the little street that's the entrance street to the park, for example. And as a fundraising idea, we talked about selling 100 tickets at $100 each and raffling off naming rights to that street for 1 year. So that every year annually, we could raise $10,000 for the park, and basically some family in the community would have that entrance road named after them for the season. It might be a fun thing to do annually, and then at the end of the year, they get the sign to keep, and be kind of a fun fundraiser, and maybe take one of the best parking spots at the park and do the same thing, raffle off a, front row parking spot for someone. Different fundraising ideas that get the community involved, that are fun, and, just get us all involved and hopefully proud of where we live.
Okay, good, Matt. Thanks for the explanation. Very good. At this point, public comment? Is there any public comment? All right, good to see you, Vito.
Came for the purpose of, some things was discussed already, but we'll go back on them. Yeah, because I have two issues that I've come across recently, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to go. And one of them is the fact that there's been newsletters or emails sent around about changing our electric boxes. Now, there was one time we were 5 years ago, everybody was worried about they were going to invade our privacy and everything else, and they were invasive, these meter boxes. And now we can get it done for free because the state has allowed it, as I understand it.
Oh, the opt-out, you mean?
Yes.
Is that to opt out?
Yep. You can opt out, as I understand it.
Yeah, I'm not aware. We're personally opting out, but I think we pay extra
No,
for
I
that.
understand it's free.
No.
The state DTE has to pay for it.
Oh,
I believe there's a charge on the electric side that, as far as I know, that hasn't changed, but we'll check on that. That there is a fee established by the Public Service Commission. If you opt out of the electric meter or DTE, and I assume it applies to consumers around the state too, then you have to pay to have them come and read, and it's something like $40, $50. I'm not sure. I don't remember how often.
Well, the email that I saw indicated it
Send me
was
a
very
copy of
simple.
it, and we'll be happy to check. We'll see you, I'm sure, before the next election committee meeting, and we can check it out. But send me a copy of the email. Be happy to check it.
Okay, because I thought that, I know everybody was concerned back then with the radiation and everything else and things going on. So I thought that they had made any allowance for it to go ahead and change it, but okay, I'll dig up the letter and show it to you. The other issue is, I know you discussed at one of the last meetings, one of the last two meetings, about the water, and he was talking about, how much we pay for the water. And the question came up that I was very involved in Grosse Pointe Woods when the big hullabaloo came up over there about, because people have 3/4 inch meters, that they have the potential of using more water. And I thought our water meters read how much water goes through our meter. So what's this potential thing? And it was discussed in this committee here about 2 meetings ago, 1 or 2 meetings ago.
well, yeah.
And it was tabled, and I know Bruce was involved in it quite a bit about what it was going to do, because what they did in Grosse Pointe Woods was crazy. They turned around and they made all the people in the area change their meters. And the cost for them to change their meters far exceeded what it was costing them for the water that was going through. Because if you've got a meter, my understanding of a meter, it reads how much water is going through your meter, and that's what you pay. But they didn't think of it that way. They thought, because the guy that came here and talked to you, is the guy that says, hey, this potential thing is a big magic thing, that since it's a bigger meter, it has the potential to let more water pass through, so you should have to be paying more. Don't know anything about it?
Yeah, Mark, do you know anything about that?
What was talked about here was, and it's a legitimate question, our bills do not break down water and sewer and give you enough, significant detail. The reason it was changed is part of the new meter process with new bills, we will be able to break that information out much easier. We currently send out, we're one of the remaining people that send you a postcard bill. It doesn't give you the detail, and what occurred in the woods, and I only know a little bit about this, they were talking about, there are certain for example here, if you go to Florida in the winter, there is a minimum bill charge. There's much more detail. We've looked at samples from the farms, all of our neighboring communities around, including St. Clair Shores. In fact, that's the one that someone brought this to the mayor and looked at the St. Clair Shores bills, and they do provide much more detail on it. We're not able to do that until we change our billing system, which is new software, which is going to be in next year's budget, as was talked about earlier. But when you show me the other letter, I'll give you much more detail about it.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, if water is one thing and the sewage is something else. The sewage is everybody's cost.
Well,
That you can divide by the head count of the people, or
Yeah,
however you
and-
want to do it.
one of the issues that came up, according to what I briefly read in the newspapers about this, in the woods, had to do with what the fixed charges are, and you are correct that they were gonna put a fixed charge based on the size of the meter, which I believe they did not put into place, because you're
Oh, yes, they
right.
did.
I don't think well, again, I may have misread but I don't know the answer in detail there. But we can talk about that too.
Okay. We'll
Yeah,
get together.
Vito, that was, we had actually a pretty active discussion in November, I think, and just before Thanksgiving, a couple residents, one on Clairview, and brought to my attention maybe a sample of 12 different jurisdictions: Southfield, Hazel Park, St. Clair Shores, all to Grosse Points. And we were perhaps the only one that didn't have like a meter charge, the breakdown between water and sewage. Some of them had a bond charge. One of the communities, one of the municipalities, I think, had 8 different components that comprised the bill. So, I mean, it's something, it's legitimate, to address residents' concerns that, we have more detail. Because I've been asked that, how much is water, how much is sewer? And I don't know. I don't know. I thought it was actually closer to 50-50, but the breakdown between water and sewage. But
Why are they on the same bill anyway? Isn't the water itself a cost that you can
Now,
identify?
it's usually a combined fund. Almost every city that I know of have water and sewers like one fund.
yeah, right now we have 2 enterprise funds, one for the marina and then one for water and sewer. It actually says water and sewer. And that's one of really our only 2 enterprise funds. And we're a pass-through. You're expected to make money. You're actually supposed to break even. Your auditors don't want you to lose money. But and we talked about the water main breaks, we have to cover that. We're responsible for the miles of the system underneath the roads. So when they break, that's charged to the water and sewer fund. At one time, I think we had a practice of allocating $300,000 for maintenance and repairs of our existing underlying infrastructure. So, I don't know, it was split during the year. Because when they break, they break. And you gotta fix them on an emergency basis. And we really have one contractor, he might be there at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and they have to shut off water. People are inconvenienced, but you know, when it's in front of your house. And I get the calls. You know, remember, we're the complaint department.
I know it well, because we had that guy come in on our property,
Yeah.
going along the city part of off the curb, and he had no idea, and my daughter stood in front of a tree,
Oh, really?
keep going that one way, and we got him to go on the other side of the tree, and that's where the break was. And he wanted to tear the whole tree apart, because he says he's going to a straight line. There's a lot to it all. Okay, we'll get together.
Good. Thanks, Vito. Council comments. Bob, do you have any
I have
council
nothing,
comments?
Mr. Mayor.
If anybody would like a copy of the updated master plan as to where we are right now in the process, we have several copies here. Just see us after the meeting, be happy to give you one. And see you in February.
Tina, do you have any comments?
No, thank you.
Bob?
I'm all finished, thank you.
I forgot to mention that there is a Parks Committee meeting on the 12th of February at 9 o'clock here.
Okay, good. It's by Valentine's Day, isn't it?
Somewhere around there.
Okay. Good. Thanks, Doug. I just have two comments. Number one, I'm very, very proud that this building, Albert Kahn Design Building, probably the greatest architect in metropolitan Detroit, 20th century, is who designed this building. We're gonna be recognized by the state of Michigan. Mark has made application. It's a long process, but we're very proud. It may result in some state benefits in the future. There's restrictions on then in terms of making alterations or changes to the building. But we're very pleased. The sign, Mark was telling me how heavy it is. It's cast iron, comes from the state. We're going to invite a representative from the state of Michigan. They typically like to be there because it's promoting the historic nature of the state of Michigan. So, I mean, just imagine the people that were in this building over the, last 100 years. This building's over 100 years old. Built, what, 1913 or?
I think it started in 13 and completed in 14.
Right. It had bunk rooms upstairs for the police back in the old days, at the genesis of our public safety department. So that's a wonderful event, a wonderful thing for the city. Second is the town hall. We really emphasize the town hall. We're welcoming people. We're going to try to broadcast it. It'll be on Channel 12. It'll be on the internet. So, George, I can count on you. Vito, I hope I can count on you. Rich, you're around. This is when we want people. This is when we want public comment. We sit in front, at a little table, and we have coffee and donuts or bagels, and we want to listen to what the community wants, what the residents want. We'll be talking about the master plan, the evolving master plan. We're also going to be talking about the finances because we've had a number of challenges this year. I mean, I can still remember, I think it was like April 10th, and for an accountant, that's a big day. But I got an unsolicited phone call from Rich Kaufman saying, I'm going to sue you guys. It's from Wayne County, basically saying that you guys are producing too much water going back into the system. And we settled with them, but it's at a pretty price. It's costing us, a little over $100,000 per year, and which is a fraction of what they wanted, which was $500,000. But then, we've had changes, or we've had our actuary send a bill we approved out of the pension commission for $32,000, and we're getting new software so we can better detail the water bill and help Rhonda with the financial statements. That's $50,000. So these challenges are going to mean we're going to really have to maybe tighten our belt and sharpen our pencils or whatever, but and see what's in store for the city. But I do welcome everyone. We really want to hear your ideas. And so with that, our future council meeting is February 19th. Again, the town hall is Saturday at 10 o'clock on the 16th. We welcome everyone there. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.